Hey, this is C&D channel. I'm Chris, and this is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC on Fox, and also post-fight analysis on Bellator 57, the main card. Some thoughts about the Fox card. Let's just say I'm not a big fan of just having one fight on the Fox card. You know, it was a minute long. You know, for as like a hardcore fan of MMA, it's like, oh, I know who these guys are, I know what they bring. You know, it's not like I'm gonna stop watching or anything. Thinking about it in the more casual fan mindset, it's like, well, you build this up and you only get a minute of action. I just don't know if there are new fans that watch this, if they're gonna stay and watch other UFCs now, because they didn't get to see a lot here. I think it was a mistake not to have at least the Poirier versus Garza, and especially the Ben Henderson versus Guida fight. One thing I'd like to point out too is Poirier versus Garza ended with a Darce choke, so there's jiu-jitsu right there. Ben Henderson versus Clay Guida, fight of the night. Lots of wrestling there. High-paced action. Went to decision, you know. But it was still a fun fight. And then Junior Dos Santos came Velasquez, you know, Dos Santos won by knockout. You had a striking finish, a submission finish, and a lot of like wrestling / like a decision finish. You had essentially in those three fights what MMA has to offer. So I think it was a really big mistake, unless you had Fox Deportes or something, not to have those fights there, because they really showcased what's good about MMA and the UFC in general. I think they kind of missed a ball there. I'm thinking just in the casual fan perspective too. You know, like I said, you know, saying lasted, you're hyping this up only to last a minute. You know, I mean, it's cool that it ended with a knockout, but at the same time, I don't know how receptive a casual fan would be. I mean, one person, you know, I was reading said, oh yeah, if you have a problem with the time, oh, remember that Mike Tyson had really short fights and people paid to see him. It's like, well, one, it's Tyson. I mean, that guy has a huge name. You know, two, there's still an undercard there. And I think that's the difference with MMA and boxing too. You know, I know a lot of people that like about MMA is that they have really strong undercards. It's like Pacquiao versus Marquez. You're just kind of watching that fight. You pay to watch that one fight. But in MMA, you know, all the fights have this potential to be really good. Ben Henderson versus Guida was excellent. And I think that's where MMA and boxing is a lot different as well. You know, it's that you're kind of watching it for the whole. You know, like the first fight of the main card could be fight of the night. You know, I mean, that's the way it works. It's not always like the main event. And so that's also why I feel that it's, you know, it would have been a better idea to have a better undercard, or to have the undercard on Fox. I understand it though. I mean, that's what the deal was, you know, for this first UFC on Fox. Moving forward, you know, it'll probably be different. I would assume it would be different. Another thing that wasn't great with me was at the very end, and this got a little play in a couple websites. Dana White was kind of burying Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez. It's, oh, I don't know what Cain Velasquez should have done, you know. It's like, my former champion didn't have a good game plan. my current champion doesn't have a good gas tank. I mean, what's he doing? You know, you just buried your two guys. Well, why are you don't need to point out their weaknesses like that. I mean, they exist. I guess, you know, you want to be truthful in a sense, but it's just one of those things. It's like, you know, you're pointing out Junior Dos Santos that he gets tired, and repeatedly pointed out, and you're repeatedly pointing out how Cain Velasquez, your former champion, was pretty much messed up. I mean, your two best heavyweights, you just gotta bury them. I mean, I don't know why he did that. I don't think it's a good idea. You know, you don't want to do that as a promoter. You know, I think. But, you know, like I said, moving forward, we'll see how UFC on Fox goes. Let's go start out with the fights now. Junior Dos Santos beat Cain Velasquez in 1 minute and 4 seconds by knockout, become the new UFC Heavyweight Champion. Good win from Dos Santos. I mean, this guy's hands are deadly. He's great, especially in that first round. I will say this. I think Cain Velasquez was kind of flat to me. I had a boxing friend that even said he didn't really commit to that left that was countered by a very looping overhand right. I mean, that thing was just way out there. You know, it kind of surprises me he got caught by that because it was just so out there. And it was quick. Yeah, but I do feel that Velasquez was kind of flat. I think the layoff hurt him. However, he did play Junior Dos Santos' game. And, you know, just standing with him, punching with him. The kick strategy was really good. But, you know, Dos Santos has proven to have, you know, his strongest suit is, his strongest aspect is his boxing. You know, and, you know, you're throwing left hooks. You know, this guy, you know, he wants that. He wants you to punch with him, you know. So, yeah, he played his game, and he lost for it. And, you know, definitely, if he could utilize what Ben Henderson did and grind him against a cage, let it go to deeper rounds, that'd definitely be the better strategy. Obviously, it's really hard to get in on Dos Santos. But, you know, I think he tried to shoot in once. But, you know, it just didn't happen. One thing is with Dos Santos, he's going to fight the winner of Overeem versus Lesnar. I think that I want to see Overeem Dos Santos more so than anything else. I think that'd be a really cool fight. Dos Santos Lesnar's interesting, but I really see Dos Santos winning. It's kind of similar to the Carwin fight, really. You know, stuffing takedowns, beating him up on the feet. If he gets taken down, he gets back on his feet. With Velasquez, I mean, at this point, besides maybe a guy like Daniel Cormier, I see Velasquez being able to beat pretty much every heavyweight out there. Mir, Carwin, Lesnar again, a couple of the Strikeforce imports. I think he'd be I think stylistically, if Cain utilizes his wrestling, he would tire out Overeem just by grinding on him. If he stands with him, then it's a different story. But stylistically, I think Velasquez could probably beat Overeem in the sense of using wrestling to tire him out. So I think Velasquez would be able to beat a lot, most of the heavyweights out there, and eventually get his rematch against Dos Santos. I don't think we saw Velasquez 100%. He played Dos Santos' game though, but I would like to see a rematch down the line if Cain Velasquez gets a consistent win streak going on. With Dos Santos, I think his biggest hurdles, or his biggest challenges, will be some of the Strikeforce guys that come in, especially like a Daniel Cormier. But the winner of Overeem versus Lesnar, those two are definitely going to be his toughest challenges. A couple Strikeforce guys. I think he can handle a guy like Mir. He's beaten some really good guys already. Gonzaga. Then he beat, he beat Nelson. Then he beat Carlin. Now he beat Cain Velasquez. I mean, he's already got a really good list of heavyweights right now that he's beaten. So it's gonna be really interesting. There are guys coming up that would be one thing that's also interesting with Dos Santos is because he's primary striker with good takedown defense. It's just one of those things where it's like you're always kind of thinking like, you know, someone might be able to wrestle his way to victory or grind him or something like that. So it's always interesting with Dos Santos, and he does get hit clean too, and he has gone into the deep waters with guys. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, you know, he could be a dominant champion, but like he's interesting just in the sense that like, and he has dominated opponents, but like you always feel that the challenger does have a chance against him, and I always find that to be kind of interesting. But you know, like I said, he's dominated opponents before, and good opponents before too. Next fight after that, Ben Henderson beat Clay Guida by unanimous decision and got fight of the night. Junior Dos Santos got knockout of the night. Great performance by Ben Henderson, man. This guy's takedown defense is something else, man. This is a guy that seriously went, you know, Clay Guida drove from one side of the cage to the other, couldn't take Ben down. There's a point where Clay Guida got a single. Ben Henderson defends it by doing the splits. I mean, oh man, this guy definitely a special athlete, man. It's Ben Henderson. His clinch game is nasty, man. I think that's his strongest offensive tool. His weakest thing about him is his stand-up, though. It's really wild, and his defense in the stand-up is not that great. He did get tagged by Guida a couple times. His heart is there. His ability to scramble and get back to his feet is awesome. I mean, he cannot keep Ben Henderson down. His top game is pretty vicious as well, especially his ground and pound is really good. I do feel he poses some interesting threats to Frankie Edgar. I think Edgar would win overall. I think that Henderson could potentially bully Frankie Edgar against a cage, but I think the striking definitely goes to Edgar, especially with Ben Henderson. His defense isn't that great. I think he'd get tagged a good amount of times. One thing I'm not big on with Ben Henderson is that he does go on his knees when trying to complete takedowns, and you know it's doesn't seem to work. He does it a lot too, and you know he really should stop doing that. I think. He does get in bad positions. I mean, Clay Guida had a really tight guillotine. Man, this guy is not submittable either. I mean, seriously, he shows in just about every fight that you cannot submit this guy. You know, he's got a lot of strength too. I mean, the guy's legs are tree trunks. I think that's what really helps him against the cage as well, in the clinch. So, you know, it's just a good win. Great fight, too, man. Really great fight. You know, definitely, even though the scorecards were unanimous for Ben Henderson, Clay Guida put up a really good fight. Guy's got heart for days. The guy, he keeps coming. Ben Henderson can match that, though. You know, he showed off some good skills. Guida versus Maynard would be pretty cool. Guida Seaver. There's just a lot of guys that Guida can fight. Tough guy, you know, he can always give him a top guy because he's always a match for the top guys. Or he's also, you know, good against not, you know, guy, up and comers as well too. Just really good fight. Really impressed by Ben Henderson's performance. He's been getting a lot of decisions, but he has really good fights. Actually in the UFC, I don't think he's had a finish yet. Bocek, Miller, Guida, great 3-fight win streak, all decisions, but always in good fights. Okay, next fight after that, Dustin Poirier beat Pablo Garza by Darce choke in the second round. Good win by Poirier. He's definitely coming up. He beat Jason Young before this, and before that he beat Grisby. Now Garza. He's getting a really solid win streak as a featherweight. He looks like he's gonna be a contender pretty soon. 3-fight win streak. Definitely getting his name out there. Garza was he was actually on a win streak himself, and now Poirier. And Poirier beat him, so good win for him. I'm interested to see who they give him next. Thinking maybe the winner of Homnick versus Chang Sung Jung. There's a couple guys out there. I'd like to see how he does against a wrestler. The winner of Nunez versus Gambarian would be very interesting as well. Against Mike Thomas Brown, like I said, against a wrestler. There's a lot of good fights for Poirier, or else he can fight another winner here, as Ricardo Lamas beat Cub Swanson by arm triangle, and I believe this was submission of the night. Poirier versus Lamas would be pretty cool. Lamas has been creeping up, man. Swanson's always been that mid-tier guy. If you beat the guy, you can kind of fight the top guys, type of thing. Lamas, he beat Grice by head kick and follow-up punches, and now he beat Cub Swanson by arm triangle. He has really solid wrestling, and his stand-up's improving. There's a lot of good fights for him. Some of the opponents I said for Poirier, he can give to Lamas. So he's definitely someone to watch out for. Just one of those guys that's quietly getting wins in his division. So good win from him. And next fight after that, DeMarcus Johnson beat Clay Harbinson by TKO in the first round. The thing with Harbinson and that season of The Ultimate Fighter, I'm not fond of the talent of that season, to be honest with you. Didn't think that they were very strong. I didn't think a lot of them, besides El Kuki, were UFC caliber guys. I still feel that way. DeMarcus, when he wins, I think he generally finishes. When he loses, he usually gets finished. I don't think his fights go to decision in the UFC. I think he's just good enough to be a UFC caliber talent, but he's very much a lower tier guy. And I expect to see him against more lower tier guys as well. Or at least if he gets more towards the mids and upper tiers, I can't see him beating those type of guys. So we'll see. The welterweight division's kind of a Shark Tank. I don't really know who he can give this guy. He keeps winning though. He keeps proving his spot in the UFC. But I say give him some. Give him a Che Mills or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. Or something like that. Next fight after that, Darren Ayanoyama beat Kid Yamamoto by unanimous decision. Man, he won every round. I expected Yamamoto to win. That was another thing with this card. I expected Escobedo to beat Caceres, and Caceres won every round against him. And then I expected Yamamoto to beat Ayanoyama, and then and most people did too. And Ayanoyama ended up winning, on every round. Even got a 30-26 in one judge's scorecard. Kid Yamamoto 2-fight losing streak, losing to Demetrius Johnson. Now Ayanoyama. With UFC going to Japan, I can see him keeping him for that card. Otherwise, don't know what he'd do with the guy. He's not panning out in the UFC. Good win, name win for Nakayama. He was coming off a pretty long layoff, you know. You can always use, I believe he's a bantamweight. They found bantamweight. You know, you can always use more bantamweights. So it's interesting to see who he fight next. Next fight after that, this one, you know, I personally feel it should be overturned, as Robert Peralta beat Mackin Semmerser by TKO. The thing that was questionable was that Peralta and Semmerser, they clashed heads, and then Semmerser seemed to be kind of really out from that clash of heads and was taking strikes afterwards. You know, if Nick Lentz can get his fight overturned to a no contest, I can kind of see this fight turn out the same way. The ref missed the headbutt. You know, but the thing is, it's one of those things where it's like King Mo and Hoger Gracie, they clash heads, and you know, and then Hoger lost by follow-up strikes after that. So you know, it's really tough. It's really hard to get decisions overturned. You know, so. But, you know, it's a good win for Peralta. Semmerser hasn't really been the most winningest guy in the UFC. He's a good fighter. You know, he beat Alex Caceres. And his only other one before that was, like, Ragni Fabiano. He kept losing after that. So he's not the most winningest guy. But he's a good fighter. Peralta, though, you know, he has really good striking. I think he dropped Semmerser at one point in the fight. Outside of this like TKO finish. So you know, he's quietly also building himself up in the 145 division as well. You can give him someone like Lamas, give him Poirier maybe. You know, he's definitely getting a win streak in this division. And there's a lot of interesting fights for him as well. Okay, next fight after that, Alex Bruce, Leroy Caceres beat the Apache Kid, Cole Escobedo. You know, I expected it. You know, I was never impressed with Caceres, but, you know, he won 30-27. Even when he was put on his back, he was going for submissions as well. You know, just good win for him. He's still young. He's still able to get better. He looked pretty solid here, actually. You know, maybe I'd like to see like Alex Caceres versus Nam Fan. I think that fight kind of makes a lot of sense to me. If you want to kind of throw him up there and give him like someone like a Mizugaki, he's definitely in the right weight class now as well, in bantamweight. You know, I think there's some pretty fun fights for him as well. Ivan Mendivar's out there, you can give him. If you know. Give him some lower tier guys. I just can't think of who the lower tiers of the bantamweight division are. With Escobedo, I think he might be cut. He lost from the UFC. He lost to before this. He lost to Mizugaki. Before that, I think he lost to Barao. I'm not too sure he lost to before that. And now he lost to Caceres. You know. You know, he's on a losing streak. I think he might be cut. Next fight after that, Mike Pierce beat Paul Bradley by a split decision. Good win for Pierce. He's always going to be trouble for any welterweight. He has a good mixture of striking and wrestling. He's only lost to Fitch and Hendricks. And he has heavy hands. His striking's getting a lot better, and his wrestling's solid as well. With Bradley, I think he's going to get cut from the UFC. He lost to Natal before this, and now he lost to Pierce. You know, 2-fight losing streak right now. Doesn't have much of a place in the UFC, so might get cut. You know, he might stay. It's tough to say, really. But with Pierce, yeah, there's a lot of interesting fights for him. In the UFC, give him someone like a Paul Tiago maybe, or someone like that, you know. Give him someone like a Stun Gun, Dong Hyun Kim. So yeah, there's a lot of good fights for him in welterweight. And finally, Aaron Rosa beat Matt Lucas by majority decision. One person, very odd scorecard to give a draw, and then the other two to give 30-26. I mean, it's just one of those decisions that's very odd. You know, good win from Rosa. He's a veteran. You know, he's very experienced. I don't really see what he can do in the light heavyweight division, though. I see him fighting like the Igor Pekrajaks and Anthony Parash, who's coming off a win over like Diabate, or like a James Tahuna maybe. I kind of see him as a lower tier fighter. I don't know what he's really gonna do in the division. Get him like Brandon Bear or something. Just kind of close out lower tier, I guess. It's Matt Lucas' first loss in the UFC. Maybe he should cut to 185 if he can. I think he's weighed that before. And see if he can get some success in middleweight. Okay, let's go on to the Bellator card. As you know, this was a really good card. As Douglas Lima beat Ben Saunders, beat TKO in the second round. Very similar finish to the Lozano fight, and Lima showing a much improved stand-up game. He faced some trouble in the first round, getting mounted by Ben Saunders. And Saunders is a really solid fighter as well. It makes me kind of question the Bellator tournament format. I know they are planning to make more tournaments. It's one of those cases where it's like, yeah, I want to see Lima versus Askren really bad, but I do want to see like Ben Saunders fight Ben Askren. You know, I think that'd be a really cool fight. But you know, he has to go through this tournament to do it over again. You know, I've heard suggestions like, you know, maybe they should do 2 4-man tournaments instead of like 1 8-man tournament, or something of that nature. I know they're just gonna have more tournaments though, so that'll fix some of the problems. Lima's been looking pretty solid. His ground game is deadly, of course, but his stand-up game has been improving, and he's been showing a lot of power in that right hand. You know, Saunders, he's still a solid fighter. If he gets into the next Bellator tournament, he can definitely get very far. One thing I worry about Lima against Ben Askren is when he fought Jesse Juarez, he was getting taken down over and over again and controlled until he managed to find that triangle choke. I think against Ben Askren, Lima is probably going to get taken down, but he needs to get back to his feet. He can't fight off his back. I'm kind of worried that Lima is going to start trying to fight off his back against Askren. And I think Askren has a suffocating top game, and he's not going to really fall for anything that Lima offers from his back. It's just one of those things where I think Lima definitely is going to beat Askren in the stand-up pretty bad too, actually. You know, but yeah, on the ground, you know, you don't want a guy like Ben Askren on top of you. And Lima, it would be well advised to practice just getting back to his feet, you know, constantly, and working on his cardio too. I don't know how strong his cardio is. He didn't make weight on his first attempt, and that kind of concerns me as well. But I want to see Lima win. But, you know, there's stuff about Askren, his wrestling and his top game, and what I've seen from Lima, he can get a little content on his back. And so it makes me worried for him. Glad that Lima won. You know, initially when they announced this welterweight tournament, I thought he'd win the whole thing, and he ended up winning it. You know, the guy's still really young. He's a UFC caliber guy already. Potential top 10 fighter in the future. Really solid guy, you know, really good fighter though. Next fight after that, Alexander Shlemenko beat Vitor Viana by unanimous decision. Shlemenko, man, this guy was definitely what's the word? He was showboating a couple times. Very interesting rematch against Hector Lombard. The fight, Shlemenko was really pushing forward on Viana. And I noticed that with the Alvey fight too. Viana doesn't take too well. Maybe that's why Brian Baker falls out on him, because he doesn't seem to take too well to getting pressured. And Alexander, would just storm on him. I mean, he'd really push forward on him and throw his spinning back fist and just go at him. And when he's up against a cage, he'd throw a lot of combinations and whatnot. And that's the thing. As far as the rematch, I do like that Shlemenko is getting back to his feet when taken down. It's definitely what he needs to do against Lombard. The stand up, Lombard definitely hits hard, but man, Alexander Shlemenko is a gamer, man. He can take a lot of damage and dish it out too. It could be a very different fight, or it could be more of the same from their first bout. It's tough to say. I'm pretty interested in seeing how that rematch goes. Not much to say about Roger Hollett beating John Hawk. It wasn't that great. It wasn't like a pretty fight or anything like that. So I'm not going to say much about that. I think he has a berth in the 205 tournament maybe now. So, Bezerra, Alexander, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'll just say Bezerra. Beat Doug Evans by a heel hook in the first round. He gets a berth into the 145 featherweight tournament. The thing that was really good was he fought off his back, going for arm bars, really quick arm bars. And then went for that heel hook. The only problem, the thing is, he gets pretty wild. There's still something about him that's still very green in that sense. I mean, he got slammed twice. I think he was going for some submit. He really commits his submissions, but by doing that, he got slammed twice. He's a really interesting fighter, and Bezerra is, and he's 4-0 in Bellator now. So it's very interesting to see how he'll do in the next tournament. He has some solid, he's very well rounded, and his ground game is pretty nasty, That's pretty much all I got to say with Bellator. In the undercard, Matt Van Buren won his fight, Chris Hordesky won his fight. So there's not really much else to say there. And then the Pacquiao fight happened. There was some controversy apparently. I don't really know how Marquez won. I think that Pacquiao pretty much edged out Marquez, at least by 2 rounds. It was a really fun fight. If even if you're not a boxing fan, or if you are, it was a fun fight. There's a lot of action, and it was really fun to watch. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this that Saturday of combat sports. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you very much.